All right, to do the dodge and burn overlay in a way that worked, I keep it at 100%, otherwise I'd have to change the opacity for every frame. I didn't want to deal with that. So instead I just changed the levels of that overlay layer and set them to adjust the way I wanted for each frame. Okay, so now I have all my adjustment layers, I have all my variations, and I'm really happy with the overall animation. One last thing I could do, because there's this big jump now from the first frame to the last frame, I could loop it. So select all of your frames and then go to your frame options, say copy frames, then go back to your frame options and say paste frames, paste after your selection. So it just puts them, a double of them, and then while they're selected, then you reverse that. So it's going to play first forwards and then backwards. Let me show you what that looks like really quick. And I like this half-second timing, but it depends what you're shooting. You might want to show this timing a little bit slower, like maybe a second per frame, or 0.7 seconds, or faster, like 0.2 seconds, depending on what you're showing. The common mistake for students is they make it go a little too fast. Okay, so now you see it's going backwards. And then it will linger for 2 frames on the first frame, and then it will start again. So that's a way to loop it seamlessly, kind of connecting the end with the beginning. More for the animation than for your storyboard. All right, so now I like the animation. I save it as a PSD file. Here it is, all finished. That's what I'm going to go back to output any animation files. And then here's another thing you can do. If you want to play it outside of Photoshop, you can go to timeline, and we convert it from the frame by frame. Click here, and it will convert it to the timeline. And the reason you want that is because from this screen, this is new to new versions of Photoshop, you can render the video as an MP4 and put it into iTunes, onto your phone, that kind of thing. Play it as a video. And then just use all the default settings onto the desktop to render it in full resolution as an MP4 file. So the benefit of that is that it will play at high resolution. But in order to be able to upload our animation to PhotoBucket, we're going to need to shrink it. We're going to have to shrink its resolution. And then when we save it as a GIF file, which is a low-res online format for animation, it's going to reduce all these beautiful colors I have to only 256 colors. So it's going to look really blocky and a little choppy. All right, so let's see if that video rendered. I see the MP4 here. If you double-click on it, it will open in QuickTime. And then you can play it through. And it should match the timing that you used in Photoshop. And if you wanted to loop and just play endlessly, you just hit Command-L, and it will start over once it stops.
That's so cute.
All right. So now that we've got that, and we've got the Photoshop file that produced it, right? These are both just for my files. Now I can play with the Photoshop file and make an online file that's lower res. So the first thing I'm going to do to shrink this is to actually go to the timeline, go back to the storyboard mode of keyframes, and go to my very top layer here. And now we're going to reverse it. Instead of making frames from layers, we're going to flatten the frames into layers. And what that does is that will merge all of these different adjustment layers into flat frame layers. You'll see them there. So how many frames do I have? I have 83 frames for my animation. And then everything underneath frame 1, I can select and delete. Okay? So now it's just simple 83 frames. And now I want to go to image size. And I want to make them all 8 by 8 inches. I have resample checked. By 100 pixels per inch. So that takes it down from each frame or each layer being 6 megabytes to fewer than 2 megabytes, which is quite a bit smaller. That's going to help with the online animating. Okay, and then, but it's still plenty big. If I view it at 100%, you still see it clearly on the screen. It just won't play at high def as cleanly. And then I'm going to go to File, Save for Web. So I'm not saving over my Photoshop file. Instead, I'm saving for web as a GIF. And these are the settings I like. Adaptive, diffusion, full 256 colors, at a quality that's bicubic smoother. Now the problem with GIFs is they're limited. The most they can do is 256 colors. So you play that, it's going to look kind of grainy because it's breaking up those colors. And then you say save, and it will save your file as a GIF to the desktop. And then you have to test it. So on the desktop, you'll see your GIF file here. You test it by opening it with any browser, because GIFs only animate within online browsers. And if it works there, if it animates the way you want, then it will upload to PhotoBucket and play in PhotoBucket. Come on. Mine's a lot of frames, so even reduced, it's going to take a little while to load. But there it is. And once it loads all the way, then it would start at the beginning and play all the way through. Now I added a lot of extra memory to it by looping it through, right? So if I wanted to have that memory, I just wouldn't have it loop backwards and reverse itself like it's doing right now. Yeah, so that looks good. So that would load fine. So now at this step, I am going to resave this with a new name, because this isn't a GIF. This is just a shrunken version of my Photoshop file with flattened frames. And so now I'm going to get rid of all of these animation frames, but keep all my layers, just so I don't mess it up. And I'm going to resave this as my final storyboard. So assignment 11, Magpie Mask, final storyboard. All right, so how do we do this? I need to find my center frame, the one I want in the middle. And I think that's probably going to be either this one or this one. And I like this one more. So I'm going to indicate what my center frame will be. I'll make it green. And then around my center frame, I'm going to grow my canvas size. I'm going to make it 30 inches wide by 40 inches tall. Okay. So that's lots of space to build around. I'm going to make a new layer underneath all of my frames that I fill in with white. And then I'm going to use my guides, go around my center frame, select it so that my guides snap to it. Then I'll turn on the grid, and I want to have 1 inch on this scale between each of my frames. Okay, so if I turn off the grid, you'll see with my guide there, that shows me where I'm going to nest my others. The easiest one is the first frame. I steal that and I move that up there. And then my last frame, which is a little more difficult, there we go, I think that's it. Or maybe that one, or maybe that one, or maybe that one. Let's just go with this one. And move that down into the final position. And so now I have my beginning, my middle, my end, and now I need to choose which frames I think fill out the rest of it. So obviously, I can just kind of jump around and say, okay, whoops, switch to auto select here. That could be a nice next move. Then maybe this. Then maybe this. Right? And then, this is where it gets a little trickier. When I get below my middle frame, I'm going to uncheck auto select layer and I deal from the bottom of the deck. So maybe this one, I select the layer and then I deal from the center there. And skip a few more, select that layer, not just turn it on. And see, but I want to make sure there's a visible difference. And for that one, there really isn't. So I turn that one off. I go a little bit deeper, select that layer, pull it down. There we go, adding those sides. Then I go a lot deeper, pull down. Yeah, that feels pretty good. So if that's the storyboard that works, I can then hide my guides. And I'm going to save this as my final storyboard, as a PSD for myself, and then as a JPEG. And this is a high enough resolution that it will print really beautifully as a portfolio piece, even though they're cropped exposures. And if you want to, I'm just used to doing 30 by 40, but you can crop it a little bit closer. In fact, this is how I would recommend you do that. Just go to canvas size and make it like 30 by 35, and it will crop it for you. Perfect for Instagram. And then you'll save it as a JPEG to upload to PhotoBucket. So that way, you have the 3 things you need to upload. You have your sketch, your GIF animation, and your final storyboard. And you have the Photoshop version of that final storyboard as well to print from for your portfolio. And that's all there is to it. We'll be uploading those and critiquing those at the beginning of next class.